On this section, this is from section 4.4. I want to talk to you a little bit about signs, SIGNs, on trig functions by quadrants. The illustration for that is all students take calculus. The emphasis here is on positives and negatives. Sine and cosine and tangent are all positive in first quadrant, and so are the reciprocals, cosecant, secant, cotangent. There's no question they're always positive in first. In second, sine is positive and cosecant, its reciprocal, is positive. Remember, another name for sine is y. And so cosine and tangent are negative in the second quadrant. So the purpose of all students take calculus is to emphasize the quadrants that sine is positive in. This is going to be very important when it comes to narrowing down what quadrant should a drawing be in. Third quadrant, we see tangent is the only one that's positive. Tangent is positive in first and third, whereas sine is positive in first and second. Sine and cosine are negative in third. Moving on to fourth quadrant, all students take calculus. That stands for cosines. Cosines are positive in fourth quadrant and first and fourth. And secant, the reciprocal of cosine, is also positive. Therefore, sine and tangent are negative. This is going to be really important. All students take calculus. It's a counterclockwise, first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, fourth quadrant. We could say all sines, tangents, cosines. That's one part of the sine problem. Another part of the sine problem is inverses. Remember, above your sine and cosine and tangent button is the inverse. And the inverse is really saying, normally when we do a sine, we say the sine of 45 degrees equals the trig ratio, square root of 2 over 2. Well, this is the reverse of that, where we take the sine inverse and we take the trig ratio here and put it after the sine inverse, and that will give us the angle. If we're in degrees, it'll be in degrees. If we're in radians, it'll give it to us in radians. The same with cosine and tangent. So the vocabulary here is important. After sine is angle, theta, or x, whatever you call it. The trig ratio is the number across from it, and that's kind of important to know. That's a term that you'll need to know. Now look what happens with the inverse sign. The trig ratio is in here, and the unknown quantity over here is the angle. So to give an example of that, here we have the sine of theta equals 0.707. Now see, we know the trig ratio, but we're missing the angle. So look up here, we're missing the angle. And now if I didn't know this was square root of 2 over 2, I would be going to my calculator and using the inverse sign of 0.707, the trig ratio, and that would give me the angle. If I was in degrees, it would be 45 degrees. If I was in radians, some calculators will say pi over 4, most will say 0.7854. Now this is related to sines also. This is a this is a way of showing the unit circle inverse, that it only exists, sine inverse only exists from negative 90 to positive 90, and we call that fourth and first. That's different than first and fourth. Notice that sine inverse is positive in first and it's negative in fourth, just like we were talking about above. Cosine, on the other hand, is a first and second quadrant. If it's cosine inverse, the calculator can only give you answers in first and second. First if it's positive, and second if it's negative. Now remember, cosine is positive in first and fourth. All students take calculus, first and fourth. But the calculator can only come up with a first and a second quadrant answer. Back here, the sine calculator can only come up with the fourth and the first quadrant. And the problem that presents is, what if the answer is in the second or the third? And that's one of the purposes of this series right now. And then the last one is tangent. Tangent inverse from negative 90 to positive 90, or negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2, is positive in first quadrant, negative in fourth quadrant. Now remember, tangent is also positive in third quadrant, but the calculator can't give you that. Calculators can only give you one answer at a time. In fact, no calculator is going to give you a third quadrant answer. You can see none of these gets a third quadrant answer. Now this is the more difficult looking way of saying what I just showed you above. Here's sine inverse. It only exists from negative 90 to positive 90, fourth and first, which is different from first and fourth. Here's cosine inverse. Exists domain and range. Range is 0 to pi, which is 1 and 2 quadrants. And the tangent inverse, again, negative 90 to positive 90, quadrants 4 and 5. So looking back again, this is a key. This diagram right here is a key. Visualizing where calculators can give answers when sine is negative or positive, when cosine is negative or positive, when tangent is negative or positive. Nothing against these quadrants over here. It's just the calculator is not going to be able to give you answers there. So hopefully this will help you, and then we're going to take this another step further. There's a reason for this. Let's see if we can animate this a little bit. Guess not. Oh, here we go. Finally. Now the red one is the sine wave. That's the one we spend a lot of time on. The sine wave is going to go up here and around. And this is the inverse sine. This is actually the graph of it. Notice it's very short, whereas this sine wave just keeps going. It goes off to the left and off to the right forever. Here we go again, just one more time. The blue one is the inverse sine. It's a very short graph, fourth and first, whereas the sine wave here is coming from way back here and nice and flows ahead. This is a picture of that. And then here's one example. Here is an angle that is not shown. It's a point, negative 3, 4. And you'll notice over here I make a reference triangle with this reference angle right in here, and label the sides. Notice that the missing side is 5. This is a 3, 4, 5. Negative 3 is here, and the positive 4 is there. So we would say that the sine of theta equals 4 over 5 using this, and it's positive in, of course, first and second quadrant. Now, if I actually went to the calculator and looked it up, it would not give me this angle in the second quadrant. It would give me 53.13 degrees, which is in first quadrant. According to my drawing, that's wrong. It's in second quadrant. So that's where the reference angle comes in. Using the second quadrant reference angle, I would subtract 53.13 from 180. This is 53.13. Now I borrowed that from the calculator, which was first quadrant. My drawing goes, that's wrong. Sine is positive in second quadrant. So we're going to continue this. You would see here, you would take 180 minus 53.13, and that would give you 126.87. That is the right quadrant, but the calculator didn't give you the right quadrant. It gave you 53.13. Little weakness of the calculator. Actually, the calculator is programmed to the real issue, not vice versa. Okay, and once again, remind you, all students take calculus. Here's the same reference angle, and this time let's do tangent. Tangent is, with my same reference angle, 4 over negative 3. And tangent is negative in fourth and second. When I look it up on the calculator, tangent inverse of 4 over negative 3, I get negative 53.13, which is down here in fourth quadrant. Wrong quadrant, supposed to be in second quadrant. So I'm going to use that reference angle, which is 53.13, and this time I'm going to go again to the 180 axis. If you remember from your geometry, 53.13 in this quadrant, vertical angles are congruent, would be 53.13 into this quadrant, subtract it from 180, and that would give me the 126. This is the same one we just did. Now we're going to do this with sine, and I want to show you that the calculators just aren't very accurate on this, so that's where you come in. You're needed. Cosine is adjacent, negative 3 over 5. Notice I'm using this triangle, even though we're looking at this big angle out here. And cosine is negative in second and third. Our drawing's in second, so I go and look it up on my calculator, cosine inverse of negative 3/5, and it actually gives me 126.87, which is in second quadrant. That is the right answer. Finally, we got to it, and only the cosine would give us that one in the right quadrant. The point is you must correct what the calculator does. It does not give you the right quadrants. You cannot just believe it. You have to be smarter than your calculator. So hopefully this will help you. We have more of these to do, and I'll post them later. This is part 1 of inverses.